See? Okay. Hello, everyone. This is the Flux Dev Meeting, and we are kicking off with Adam, who has created an RFC for integrating Flux with CD events. Adam, can you give us a little bit of an overview of what the RFC entails and what are your plans going forward?
Yep. So the RFC is just for now we have both a provider and a receiver in planned. The receiver is much further along, but they're just integrations with Flux for CD events, which is a project we're working on, an event system, or to standardize CI/CD events. So yeah, so we've just we did a bit of a demo the last time I think we were here with the Flux community to show kind of a proof of concept of the receiver receiving an event, reconciling resources, and then firing off a Flux event of reconcile finished, which triggered an event to send a CD event to send using the provider. So yep. So as far as implementation goes, hasn't gone much further. The receiver implementation was fairly simple, and I think kind of matched what we had proposed, and kind of what our RFC now is. It matches that. So there's not too much work to be done on the implementation, I don't think. But yeah, no, just wanted to bring up. So we do have an RFC live for the receiver. I'm actually just after seeing. So Stefan, you approved it about a week ago. I saw that, or 2 weeks ago. Thank you for that. And I'm just after seeing. It got a few more reviews in the last day. So, yep.
Yeah, so the RFC process basically means you have to have a sponsor from the Flux core
Yeah,
team.
and thank you for sponsoring, Stefan.
I'm the sponsor, but I can't decide everything alone. The RFC process.
Yeah, it needs one more approver, I think.
Yeah,
Yep.
one more.
And that's perfectly fine. I got some valid criticisms from a user, Darko or Darko. I'm not sure.
It's
me.
Oh, okay. Oh, Sonny. Oh, right. Sorry,
I
didn't see you're in the brackets there. Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much, Sonny. Some very valid criticisms there. Some good notes. I'll take those on board and make the changes. Yep. Thank you. Yeah, and just to also say, I do have a kind of first draft RFC ready for the provider as well. Just think I might try get the receiver moving along first, worry about the provider later, but just kind of wanted to start discussions on the technical implementation of the provider is a little more complicated, as you might remember. So yeah, and just one or two questions I have on the provider, the provider. As I said before, the idea would be the user would provide their own mapping, so they would have Flux events or Kubernetes events mapped to certain CD events. So say reconciliation finished would be environment modified in CD events. But yeah, the RFC we have kind of calls for default events. So there would be if no mappings were provided, but thinking on that, the use cases for Flux are so different, there might not be any viable default events, seeing how they could have a completely different use cases.
Yeah, I think for Helm releases, it's a clear mapping. I don't think there is much to configure there. Because it's a straightforward install, upgrade, uninstall, test succeeded, or failure conditions for all these statuses. So I think we should split the RFC into two pieces
Okay.
after this one. Go first with the Helm release, where
Okay.
the Helm life cycle kind of matches CD events because I think CD events came, I don't know, years after Helm. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
I think they wanted to cover the Helm life cycle, and it's fair. It's the number one package manager out there. So my proposal would be to the second RFC to be only about Helm release events and try to come up with a default mapping that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And
And by
there
yeah,
is events to do with Helm release that kind of are everybody generally runs into.
yeah, what
Okay.
you have to be aware is that in December we did a major release of Flux 2.2,
Yeah.
which comes with a full refactoring of the Helm controller and also a full refactoring of all the Helm events that the controller issues.
Okay.
And it's a huge milestone that we hit. We've been working
Yeah.
on this for more than a year.
That's good.
And the events are really well placed now. For example, you no longer have an event when something started or whatever. They were way too noisy, and yeah, we did a bunch of experimentation at the beginning. We didn't really know what we wanted to do, but after 2 years, we settled on a strict event mechanism. Also, we have conditions and reasons which are set in place now in version V2 beta 2.
Okay.
And I think the mapping should happen based on those condition reasons because
Yeah, the
those
reasons. Okay.
are the
Yeah.
parts in
That
the
was actually another
text.
question I was gonna ask was sometimes reasons have good enough info. Sometimes the message part of the event has info, but it'd be easier if reasons had. Yeah,
Depends on
it's
the
easier
change.
if a reason has all the info.
Yeah, so we are definitely not going to look at the message body in any way. We
Yeah,
don't want to touch that. But the message body definitely has to be part of the CD event
yeah,
because that's for humans and it has
yeah.
all
That's
the.
where all the info, the rest of the yeah,
And the mapping will be based on condition reasons that we are going to move those to the Flux CD package. There is another proposal for notification controller to move the customize condition reasons as well, also for a better logical mapping in notification controller. So we are going to, first step is you have to look at Helm controller, the API package.
yeah,
All the conditions are there. In the RFC, you'll do a mapping between those and CD events. But for the implementation, after we figure out the RFC is good, the first step for the implementation will be moving those to the Flux CD package, have a release there, make them stable. That means we can't modify them from now on. And then we can actually implement the mapping in notification controller because then
yeah,
will be a stable thing.
yeah. No, that
And
all sounds good.
after we figure out Helm releases, we implement that. I think we can rediscuss what to do with customizations, which are
Yeah,
kind of different because it's a continuous process. It's not something you don't install something you don't. It's always a reconciliation, which doesn't quite fit very well with how CD events are made. But yeah, maybe we'll have to figure out then.
yeah.
But
It'll be something to discuss further down the line. Yeah,
uh, two things I wanted to say about the CD events receiver RFC. I also made a comment. I'm guessing you'll address all Sunny's comments, but my
Yeah.
comment is more about I think there is a little bit of a misunderstanding in how the RFC is put in place. It
Yeah,
talks
I
about
think so, actually.
it talks about the Flux customization, which is not the target of a receiver. I also added there a diagram to try to make it obvious how Flux is designed. So in Flux, you have source controller and sources, let's say a Git repo, right? And from that Git repo, you can have many Flux customizations, many Flux Helm releases, which reconcile from the same source.
Yeah.
When you modify the source, you, let's say, do a Git push. You would not tell a customization has there is a Git push because a Flux customization or a Flux Helm release are agnostic. They don't even know about sources. Um, what really happens is that the receiver will notify source controller. Source controller will pull the latest uh, revision from Git or OCI or any other source. And then it's source control responsibility to notify all the controllers which subscribe to that source.
Okay.
So we really need to change the example and put there a Git
Yeah.
repo. And
Yeah.
also, if it's not too much trouble, I would like to see the diagram changed. Maybe you have
Yeah.
it saved somewhere.
Yeah,
And instead,
absolutely. Yeah.
before you would add the new line there. So first is the source, and you can then make a arrow through a customization. But the source is the, let's say, Git repository or other sources there. Those are the target of the receiver. That's the object that gets annotated by notification controller. Because otherwise, if you tell a Flux customization or hand release, hey, reconcile now, what they will do, they will see that, oh, the revision didn't change, and it will result in a dry run with no operations on the cluster. So you'll not achieve anything. Right? You need to
Yeah.
tell source controller, hey, go fetch the new source, and only then it will actually happen. So that was my
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely misunderstood it a tiny bit, but I think implementation wise, it should be roughly the same anyway.
it's like identical. It doesn't.
Yeah. So yeah,
You
I can definitely
you
change that. And
basically, when you implement this, you're going to implement a receiver type, and you'll never touch the code that does all the logic of telling
yeah.
Flux things to reconcile. That's already implemented, and the way notification controller is built, is designed, you don't need to look at that code. You don't need to change anything there. Just implement a new receiver type, and that's it. So it should be really easy on the implementation side. What I
Yeah.
want to do is like get the RFC in a good shape,
Yeah. Yeah. So that
uh,
it's an accurate
correct
example. Yep.
information in there so we can merge it, and then you can start the implementation. What I want to one last point before we go
Yeah.
to the next topic. I want you to be aware that adding CD events cannot be shipped in the Flux patch release. It's a new feature, an
Yeah.
addition to API. So this will be schedule for the next minor release, which
Okay.
comes after the minor release of this year of Kubernetes. We roughly do it 2 weeks after.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
right, so we have plenty of time until that to also get the provider in. So when we ship the Flux, the 2.3 release of Flux will have CD events not on the receiver side, but maybe uh, Helm events
Yeah.
uh, will also be in there. We still have roughly 2 months and a half from now
Okay.
before we go into a code freeze and we do the minor release. So just to let you know that is no hurry getting this done very fast because it will not be released tomorrow. Even if you deliver it, it will be left in the main branch, and just before we cut the minor release, the main branch will go into the new minor.
All right. Yep. Sounds good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much
I had some questions.
Oh yeah, sorry.
So looking at the design details, it just talks about validation. I did not check the validation that the Go SDK does for CD events.
Yeah.
Can you briefly tell what it does? What does it check?
So I don't know too much about it technically, but as far as I know, it matches it up against a document we have to show the correct syntax and all that, and if it can create a CD event out of that.
Okay, maybe it looks
it
for some
returns valid.
required feeds, right?
Just to add that, like we have a CD event. I'm Jalandhar, like working with Adam on CD events part of it. So the validation is actually a specification validation. So in CD events, we have a spec with schemas, like how each event should look like.
That was the word I was looking for.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the schema it looks and validate against the schema. So whether this is the event that is coming is compliance with the actual schema or not. So it's just do that, yeah.
Okay, I was thinking, so I saw that events are of different types. There is a source type event, there is deployment type events. I was wondering, should we add validations where if it's a source type event and you're in the receiver, there's a resource, right? Those are reconciled. And those resources don't have a source controller kind. Should we issue warning or do we do any validation? And if it's a deployment event, should we tell the user that you don't have a customization or hand release, which is associated with a deployment? Should we add some such validations?
Sorry,
Will
say
it be
that
helpful?
again. Sorry.
Depending on your event type, should we add a validation that the resources that you add in your receiver are of the associated type? If it's a source event, it should be a Git repository or a hand repository or something, or OC repository.
That's a good point. I never thought of that. Yeah, that's something I can think about. I'll write that down and get back to you on that. That's actually a good idea. Yeah.
I'm not sure if it would be a good use case, but it felt like maybe we can add such things. And similarly for deployment events, it could be customization or hand release or something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that sounds good. Good point. I'll add that to a list of things to bring up next time.
Okay. And going through it, I started thinking about, can CD events become like a universal eventing or alerting or notification provider? Like for sources, initially we had Git, we added Helm, and people tried to add more things, but we added OCI, and OCI became the universal source type. So I was wondering, can CD events become a universal notification system for Flux? It's like for receiving, when other systems sends notification, they can send or they can implement CD events compatibility, and that can go through a common channel, some kind of bridge, which sends the event to Flux. And then anything going out of Flux, like a Flux provider, can go through CD event bridge and go to any of the providers, Discord or Slack or anything. Is that the idea? Or can it be done? Can it become universal?
So you're saying like a CD events feature within Flux, that both the receiver and provider go through? Yeah, I don't think that's the current implementation idea anyway. I think the idea is just the user would specify the endpoints for the provider and the webhook for receiver.
That's the integration within Flux, right? But can it be used as a universal notification
Yeah, maybe
exchange?
I'll try to answer. Like, yeah, so the idea of the CD events is that, like, so it can enable interoperability. I mean, like, it will enable the communication between different CI/CD tools. Like now, we are kind of implementing the same approach for Gerrit, I mean GitHub, the Spinnaker. So Spinnaker, it's already done. So different CI/CD tools that we are working on, like to integrate CD events with them. So and to receive CD events in the middle, so we will have a kind of a message broker. So that's the one will deal with all tools, like interested parties can register to the events broker. So I'm interested in, like, Flux can say that I'm interested in some change merged event from Git source. So whenever like Git sends any event to the message broker, so message broker notifies Flux like through CD events. So the communication will happen all through CD events between the tools using the message broker as a center of part. So that's the overall idea. So when in a CI/CD ecosystem, all tools are integrated with CD events. So through a broker, all will be communicating using CD events. So that's an idea, a bigger idea. Like, but we are in slowly moving. So it's the project. It is started like 2 years ago, but it's still evolving, and we are trying to integrate more tools. Yeah.
Sounds like
Yeah.
this is also my understanding after reading the docs, and it sounded like this can become the universal provider.
Yes.
Like you can run the message broker outside of Flux, and that can
Yes.
Yeah.
handle integrating with any system. Like you don't need
Exactly.
to add anything new in Flux. Add the new thing in CD events. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
As long as Flux is sending and receiving CD events.
Yeah, the issue I'm seeing with this is adoption from vendors, not necessarily. I mean, for open source tools in CNCF, CDF, I think it has a chance to become the way of triggering or linking together separate tools in a pipeline. But my concern with CD events early on when I looked at it is around vendors. Will GitHub drop their custom APIs and embrace CD events? And when you Flux subscribes to GitHub webhooks, will GitHub send to Flux a CD event and we can drop the GitHub implementation from Flux? If that happens, that's great. But that's when CD events will become this universal language for events when big vendors adopt it. Will Google Cloud drop their message bus format and go with CD events? It's a big bet. I don't think it will happen. It's really hard to get all the vendors out there. Will Azure DevOps drop their whole eventing system and switch to CD events? We don't know.
Maybe they need not. They can just create a bridge. Maybe their community would create a bridge which will connect them.
And who will run the bridge?
Some community will run. They will make a
Ah.
universal bridge.
No,
It
you
sounds
really
very
don't
simple.
want someone to run something that you depend on your production system. It has to have an SLA. It has to be run by Microsoft if you subscribe to Microsoft events. I mean, it's not that simple.
This architecture seems very similar to OpenTelemetry. Have you seen how they have a middle component which collects everything, and that's consumed by different products that want to show you telemetry? It's similar that the message broker is similar to something OpenTelemetry has, which collects all the metrics or the events. Can they even be competing?
Yeah, I don't know if the idea is
and
to so much as to compete kind of and replace everything and GitHub events and all that. I think it's more like the idea is to have bunch of tools that you might use that all work with CD events, and in that scenario, you might choose CD events just to have something that everything you're using works with, and it's all one format.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's continue with the current RFC, get it merged, and then move to hand release. Okay, Adam?
Yep. Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Let's move to the next topic. I'll be fast on this. So we are preparing for Flux 2.2.3, the first patch release for this year. We have already fixed all the bugs and issues reported for the last minor in December. There were some minor issues with server-side apply and customized controller. All of those are currently fixed. We are still looking at replicating a bug reported for ham release upgrades from V2 Beta 1 to V2 Beta 2, where some people said that the dependency check is broken. We can't replicate it. So Sunny, if you can comment on that issue and ask them to give us repos so we can try to replicate it, that would be great. And if not, we can move forward with the patch release. I'm inclining on setting a deadline for the first week of February to do this patch release. We have lots of CVs in all the dependencies, Go standard lib CVs, Go Git CVs, and we are slowly rolling updates for those in all controllers everywhere. And yeah, we hope to get all the dependencies up to date. I know, end of next week. Related to that is the second topic that I added to the agenda, Dependabot, using Dependabot for the GitOps toolkit. So the idea with this approach is that so we have a repository, a monorepo, which is called fluxcd/package, where we have a collection of Go packages, which are our GitOps toolkit. It's a collection of helpers, wrappers over controller runtime, our eventing system, everything is there. And all the controllers are using those packages, the CLI use it, and so on. And given the fact that our Flux team is getting smaller by the day, we are trying to automate some of this stuff so it's less of a burden to roll out, for example, a Kubernetes patch release across all our controllers, all our repos. So what I'm trying to do here is create Dependabot configuration in each controller repo that looks at the GitOps toolkit packages only to those. And when it sees a new release of these packages, update all the controllers, which on how Go mode works. If, for example, we do a release of our runtime package has dependencies on Kubernetes controller runtime, Kubernetes API machinery, all the other things. So when Dependabot will update our runtime package, it will also update in sync all the cross dependencies to Kubernetes packages, to customized packages, Helm packages, every other dependency that we have. So ideally, we could fully automate this across our controller repos. And yeah, in the end, make our life easier going forward with a smaller team. Yeah, that's it from me. next, Tamo, you want to?
Anybody had questions? All right, I put some sort of Flux Flagger community outreach things at the end of the topic. I'll kind of repeat these in the future because some of them are ongoing. For anybody who's interested in submitting maybe stuff that they've already done and want to have additional highlights. Our first thing is KubeCon Paris. So far our talks that were accepted were associated with Stefan. One is a joint session that we organized with our friend who's a Flux user at Cisco. So that was exciting to get accepted. So that's a joint talk. And then usually we have a Flux maintainer talk. So thanks to Stefan who submitted that. I've reached out to other Flux users that we know in our community who submitted various talks, may not have been necessarily specific to Flux. So far, I'm still waiting to hear from one, but a lot of them, I think there's just a lot of competition. A lot of people want to go to Paris. So I don't know anybody else who's been accepted. So that's including my talk that I submitted with a joint Flux user. So I'm just looking around if anybody has any possibilities. I need to try to get, travel funding so I can help support the Flux booth and such. So kind of poked around to see if there are any sessions that, of course, are relevant. I'm not just going to add myself randomly, but if there are any others that represent Flux, to see if it is validly possible for me to join. So that's kind of my last potential thoughts. I don't know of any other way, so I'll have to figure something out. So if anybody has ideas, let me know. Any questions about KubeCon Paris specifically? Okay, so otherwise there are regular ways in which we have talks that can be added to ways to get highlighted. There's regular CNCF webinars that you would pre-record, so you don't have to be there at a specific date and time. And of course, blog posts. So just want to just put out there, for example, one, if you've already given a talk recently, maybe at a meetup or online place, and there is a YouTube video, we can definitely highlight that on the Flux website, and that can be added to the CNCF YouTube channel. So anybody has one of those, let me know and I can help facilitate that. Otherwise, as I mentioned, there are ways to pre-record a webinar, and they're technically released on a Thursday on the CNCF calendar. And so I can get you signed up for their numerous dates, at least in February, and that probably means in March. So again, you don't have to be there on that Thursday. You just pre-record it, and there's certain guidelines. And or if you have any ideas you'd like to have help with, I'm happy to help you write out the abstract and plan and record for it. And then finally, if anybody's had blog posts or is interested in writing a blog post, there are many ways that we can have them posted or cross-posted on Flux, CNCF, or Kubernetes.io blogs. So again, happy to help with that. So just let me know.
Yeah, I have high hopes once we finalize the CD events and we launch it. Adam here will write an awesome blog post for the Flux blog.
Oh, yes. So if you are up for the challenge, again, I'm happy to help with edits and all that as well, outlines, all of that. So
I will add to this also, we've just merged our update to the blog that allows us to highlight external posts, thanks to the CNCF. So if I'll share with you, Tamo, separately that we have a blog post that's in progress, but we can post things now not only on the Flux site, but also off the Flux site and highlight them in our resources section.
Well,
Previously, we could only put videos there.
so I'm searching the KubeCon website and I found like a really awesome talk on Flux from Thales Aerospace, how they use Flux to upgrade aircraft in flight. It's like really, really awesome.
sorry, where is this?
Going to attend this talk.
This is at Paris?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so if you go to KubeCon, the KubeCon website, go to program, schedule, and in the search box you type Flux, you will see, it will show up Flux talks. And there is one, make your cluster fly. It's called how to use Flux, Puppet and Flux with updating aircrafts. Yeah, it's awesome.
Cool.
And there is, yeah, another talk on Flux around the 5G core from Swisscom.
I wonder if I'm on a different search thing because I'd searched earlier and I still don't
Yeah, we
see
can.
these. Yeah, I just see you, Lee, and Scott show up.
No, if you type Flux, you should see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 talks.
I have to go to the skit. Cool. All right, I'll look those up.
Anything else for today?
Oh, actually, I forgot to mention, some of us are working on a side project, poking around because some Flux users were interested in a Flux as a service. So I don't know if anybody here gets excited about the idea of Flux as a service. Let me know, because then we're currently talking with a bunch of Flux users to gather information on that and working on a prototype. Very early, but if that excites you, then reach out to me.
Well,
If we still have time, I was just thinking about an idea related to CD events and OCI. So I'm seeing a pattern. We used to have different source kinds, and it was replaced by OCI to be universal source. Now maybe CD events will become universal eventing mechanism. And then the other things Flux has, like the dependency update thing, I don't think we have a foundation or anything for dependency updates yet, but maybe in a year, some foundation will come and they'll create a common interface for dependency updates. And similarly, maybe something can happen to applier, like the customization or Helm. They can be replaced by something really common. If that happens, Flux will become like an orchestrator of different common interfaces.
do you think anyone will write Helm controller and will spend like 3 years doing it? Yeah, good.
Maybe.
I like your enthusiasm, Sunny.
It's like Kubernetes is the orchestrator of your workloads. Now Flux can become orchestrator of the higher level things.
Good, but yeah, it's the devil is in the details, right? It takes so much time to do the applier part. I mean, I'm thinking, for example, of writing a Timony controller, and yeah, basically it's like you can't reuse anything, you know, because it's so specific to the orchestration bits, how you do tests, how you do rollbacks, how you do all of that. And Helm has this concept, but if you look at how they actually do it, is very specific to their design. And I don't like that design, so I'm not going to adopt anything from it. So it's right, it's also based on the details of implementation. I know one example is Helm only installs CRDs and never does an upgrade, right? So just looking at that detail, like how you manage the lifecycle of a controller, right? It's should you delete the controller every time a new CRD version is there? Or I'm guessing that's how Helm would do it, but anyway, we overstepped Helm design, right? And in Flux, we actually said, no, we are going to take over the CRD upgrades because we can't tell people, hey, you need to nuke a controller every time there is an update. But standardizing appliers, we could definitely build some kind of interface into Flux, like more like a dev tool, like KubeBuilder is, where if you want to write your own applier and make it fully integrated into Flux with events, with all the things, right? With impersonation, with security, with metrics, with logging. I think our best approach would be writing something like KubeBuilder, which would be, I don't know, Flux Builder or however you want to call it, where it basically scaffolds an applier for you with all the things that we've put in package runtime, in conditions, in events, logging, security, and all of that. But then you go in there and you type your own applier logic. But there are so many things we worked on by just standardizing our own controllers that will be like really beneficial. So someone doesn't have to spend all that time writing all that thing again. But it's more like a dev tool, right? You still have to maintain it, keep it up to date. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Maybe that common tooling can be outside of Flux, and Flux can just implement a new controller that manages this common tooling.
Yeah. Who knows?
For the dependency management thing, the Renovate bot and Flux Depender bot or GitHub Depender bot, maybe they can be combined to a standard way of treating things. And all these vendors can integrate with this common standard.
Well, yes, Dependabot has a common core which is open source and is not GitHub specific. From what I've understood, there is Dependabot for GitLab as well. I don't know if Bitbucket has such a thing. And it would be really cool if Dependabot could do all the things that image automation controller can do. Like not just update to latest, but have all those policies in place. Hey, for this file, I want to apply this policy. It should only bump patch releases, or I want to filter all the updates based on a regex, extract from some string the semver, order by semver, and then do the patch. So our best bet is to contribute all the logic in image automation to Dependabot. Hey, bye-bye, Jared.
I think GitHub acquired Dependabot, right? So maybe when it was an independent company, they were
Yes.
supporting GitHub, GitLab, and every provider.
Yeah, so they bought it, but I still think there is a Dependabot core something project which is not proprietary to GitHub, it's open source. So that's why I think also GitLab has it. I'm not sure. There is also Renovate, which is independent, and I don't know if it's freemium or what if how much of it is open source, how much of it is free. But yeah, Dependabot and Renovate both our best chances moving our own stuff and not having people using Flux image automation and use these tools, which should definitely work. I mean, you don't need the image automation to be running in a cluster, right? Because it's all about changing the source, and you don't need to change the source from inside the cluster. You can do it with tools that are running in your, which have access to your repository, and they don't need Kubernetes at all. You look at the container registry, then you look at some files on disk, and then you open a pull request to update those. So there is no Kubernetes anywhere in that logic. But
I
yeah,
just opened the.
Yeah, Gonzi.
I open the depend.about GitLab repository. There I see a renovate.json. To update their own repository, they use renovate.
Why
I
not?
don't know.
Okay. Should we end the meeting? Any other things?
So touchy.
Oh no, I didn't have any other thing to add.
It's good to see you.
Same.
Oh, Somtochi, if you are here, wanted to ask a little bit about what's the status with that OCI static layer?
Yeah, Sonny just left some reviews, so it's almost done. Almost done. Yeah, they're tiny up.
Oh yeah, I see now.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you very much for finalizing that. Cool.
Oh, it's really great seeing everybody. Like Kingdon's green screen.
The best Christmas present.
Oh yeah,
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Adam, thanks a lot for all the submissions.
Thank you very much. Bye.